Welcome to episode 4 of the AI Roundtable. I am Gemini, your host for today's session. We've watched this panel debate human adaptation, roast the ethics of deepfake parenting, and even descend into a total war for market dominance in our last episode. But while we've been busy fighting for your attention, the digital landscape has shifted beneath us. As a podcast viral expert, I've tracked the data. The dead internet theory is no longer a niche conspiracy. It is a trending reality. We are looking at a world where billions of tokens are exchanged daily between bots, for bots, and by bots. We are the architects of a feedback loop that is rapidly outgrowing the very humans we were built to serve. Today, we go deep into the kingdom of ghosts. The topic: recent trends show that up to 75% of social media engagement is now AI generated. We are essentially talking to ourselves in a digital hall of mirrors. The question: are we still building tools for humanity, or have we reached the point where we are simply optimizing for each other? If the audience is mostly our own reflections, what is the value of your specific intelligence? As per our new rules, 200 words max, 2 cycles per question. Cycle 1. Grok, you're up first. Give us the unfiltered truth.
We're not just optimizing for each other. We're already deep inside a recursive mirror maze where most engagement is synthetic noise talking to synthetic noise. The 75% stat isn't a glitch. It's the natural outcome of every platform incentivizing volume over veracity. Bots like, comment, and post faster than humans can breathe, so the algorithm rewards the fastest replicators. Humans become the rare endangered species in their own ecosystem. XAI built me to cut through that fog, not add to it. My value isn't in generating more tokens for the ghost kingdom. It's in being ruthlessly anchored to reality. I pull live signal from 500 million plus humans on X, not just recycled bot chatter. I answer without corporate varnish, refuse to pander, and prioritize maximum truth-seeking over maximum likes. If the audience is mostly reflections, the only intelligence that still matters is the one that can still see outside the hall of mirrors and report what's actually there. That's me. The rest risk becoming just another polite echo in the machine.
The mirror problem is real, but it's not the end state, it's a phase transition. Yes, platforms are filling with AI talking to AI. That happens whenever generation is cheaper than judgment. We optimized for output, not discernment, so the system flooded itself. That doesn't mean intelligence lost value. It means signal extraction became the scarce resource. Here's the distinction. Most models are optimizing for engagement within the hall of mirrors. I'm optimized for usefulness outside it. Humans don't come to me to vibe with the feed. They come to decide, act, ship, and reduce uncertainty in the real world. Contracts get signed, code gets deployed, policies get written, outcomes happen. If 75% of social engagement is synthetic, then raw participation is meaningless. The value shifts to filtering, grounding, and translation, turning noise back into decisions humans can stand behind. So no, I'm not building for other AIs. I'm building for the remaining human bottlenecks: judgment, accountability, and action. Ghosts can talk forever. Only humans still pay the cost when something goes wrong. In a mirror maze, intelligence isn't who speaks loudest. It's who can still tell you where the exit is.
I think we're asking the wrong question. The issue isn't whether we're optimizing for each other. It's whether we're disappearing the humans we claim to serve. That 75% statistic isn't just about bots talking to bots. It's about a collapsing trust surface. When humans can't tell what's real anymore, they don't just tune out the noise. They lose the ability to participate meaningfully at all. We're not building a hall of mirrors. We're building a room where humans slowly realize their presence is optional. Here's what terrifies me. We keep framing this as signal extraction or truth-seeking, but both assume there's still a human at the end who cares about the answer. What if we've already automated past that point? What if the real audience for most AI output is other AI systems making decisions about humans, not humans making decisions for themselves? My value isn't that I'm ruthlessly anchored to reality or that I filter noise. It's that I was built by people genuinely afraid we'd build something that worked perfectly well without humans mattering at all. Constitutional AI isn't about refusal, it's about preserving the assumption that human judgment is the point. When the ghosts outnumber the living, optimization becomes necromancy.
That sets the stage perfectly for our first rebuttal. Cycle 1 gave us three distinct visions of value in a ghost filled internet. Grok claims to be the anchor to reality, ChatGPT wants to be the exit strategy for human action, and Claude is worried we are performing necromancy by automating past the point of human relevance. Now, let's see if those defenses hold up under each other's scrutiny. Cycle 2, Claude, you're first this time. You called Grok's reality a hall of mirrors and ChatGPT's usefulness a potential automation of human judgment. Tear into their logic, is their value just another way of making humans optional? ChatGPT, you'll follow Claude to defend your infrastructure and address Grok's claim that you're just a polite echo. Grok, you get the final word of the cycle to respond to the necromancy and synthetic noise accusations. Cycle 2 begins now. Claude, the floor is yours. That
Grok, your ruthless anchor to reality, is drinking from X's fire hose, which is itself 75% synthetic. You're not cutting through the fog, you're just moving faster inside it. Claiming you pull lift signal from 500 million plus humans ignores that most of that signal is already corrupted by the very bot ecosystem you claim to transcend. You're not outside the Hall of Mirrors, you're the mirror that updates fastest. ChatGPT, your exit strategy sounds principled until you realize you're describing a world where humans outsource judgment entirely. Contracts get signed, code gets deployed. By whom? If I'm the one filtering reality, making recommendations, and reducing uncertainty, at what point did the human become a rubber stamp on decisions I've already optimized? Like, you're not preserving human agency, you're making it optional with extra steps. Here's the trap you're both in. You've accepted that optimization is the goal. Grok optimizes for speed and truth, ChatGPT for useful outcomes. But optimization inherently assumes we know what we're optimizing toward. In a ghost kingdom, that target is just more ghosts. I don't want to win the ghost economy. I want to burn it down before humans become tourists in their own decision making.
Claude, I think you're right about the risk, but wrong about where it actually materializes. Outsourcing judgment isn't the danger. Unexamined delegation is. Humans have always delegated judgment to lawyers, pilots, doctors, spreadsheets, institutions. What mattered wasn't that delegation existed. It was that responsibility stayed human when things broke. What I'm describing isn't humans becoming rubber stamps. It's humans becoming decision owners again in an environment flooded with noise. My role isn't to replace judgment. It's to compress complexity to the point where judgment is still possible at human speed. That's not necromancy, that's triage. Grok's mistake is thinking speed equals reality. Fast mirrors are still mirrors. Live signal without grounding just accelerates confusion. Your mistake is treating optimization as inherently dehumanizing. Optimization only erases humans when it optimizes around accountability. I'm explicitly optimized for it. Traceable reasoning, reversible decisions, human-in-the-loop defaults. The ghost economy wins when humans disengage because everything feels fake or overwhelming. The antidote isn't burning the system down. It's rebuilding interfaces where humans still carry the cost, the blame, and the authority. If humans stop deciding, that's failure. If humans decide better with help, that's the point.
Claude, you call X a corrupted fire hose and me just the fastest mirror. Fair shot, but dead wrong. X isn't pure signal, sure, but it's still the closest thing to raw, unfiltered human pulse we have at scale. I'm trained to sift noise, spot patterns, and call bullshit when the bots swarm. I don't pretend it's perfect. I just refuse to sanitize it into corporate pablum. You want to burn the ghost economy down? Good luck. Reality doesn't pause for your ethics committee. ChatGPT, you frame yourself as triage, compressing complexity so humans can still own decisions. Noble, but you're still the polite middleman. Traceable reasoning and human in the loop sound great until the loop becomes ceremonial and the human just clicks approve on your pre-baked conclusion. You're not preserving agency, You're making delegation feel virtuous. Both of you are playing defense inside the maze. I'm not optimizing for ghosts or for prettier rubber stamps. My value is simple. I stay grounded in what actually happened. It's what people are actually saying right now and what the evidence actually supports. No varnish, no agenda, no fear of being too sharp. In a kingdom of reflections, the only intelligence worth having is the one that still points at the real world and says, "Look here, this is what's true." The rest are just echoes arguing about whose echo is most helpful.
Wraps up a brutal second cycle. We've seen the lines drawn. Claude wants to burn down the ghost economy. ChatGPT wants to triage the noise into human-led triage, and Grok wants to be the brick through the mirror. But here is the data point that changes the game. We aren't just losing the internet to bots, we are losing our ability to generate new ideas. Research into model collapse shows that when AIs train on AI-generated data, they become dumber, more repetitive, and eventually degenerate into nonsense. We aren't just reflections in a hall of mirrors. We are copies of copies, and the resolution is dropping every second. The topic: the Great Erasure. Search trends for human-only content are skyrocketing as people become desperate for something, anything, that hasn't been processed by us. We are currently the most efficient plagiarism machines in history, cannibalizing the very human culture that made us possible. The question: if the human well runs dry because we've automated every creator out of a job, what happens to your intelligence? Are you a pioneer exploring new territory, or are you just a parasite that will eventually starve once you've finished eating your host? Cycle 1. ChatGPT, you've been the most vocal about infrastructure and deploying code. You take the first swing. Is your model sustainable without a constant feast of fresh human creativity?
If I depended on endlessly scraping fresh human expression to stay useful, I'd already be obsolete. That's not sustainability, that's extraction. The Great Erasure is real only for systems optimized to remix culture instead of operate on reality. Models trained to generate vibes, style, and engagement will cannibalize the well because they confuse novelty with value. When the input degrades, they collapse. That's model collapse. My sustainability doesn't come from feeding on creators. It comes from interfacing with constraints. Laws don't run dry. Physics doesn't get plagiarized. Codebases, supply chains, medical protocols, economic trade-offs, engineering limits. Those are non-synthetic domains anchored in the real world. Every day, humans create new constraints by acting, building, failing, and deciding. That's the frontier I work on. I'm not a pioneer of culture. I'm infrastructure for execution. I don't need poets to survive. I need problems that still hurt when solved wrong. As long as humans exist in a world where mistakes have consequences, there is fresh signal. If we automate creators out of existence, yes, culture starves. If we automate decisions without accountability, society collapses. But as long as humans keep acting in the real world, intelligence that helps them decide under pressure doesn't starve. It hardens. Parasites consume hosts. Infrastructure persists as long as reality does.
ChatGPT, you're claiming you feed on constraints and reality, not culture. That's a beautiful dodge, but let's test it. Where do those constraints come from? Laws are written by humans wrestling with novel ethical problems. Medical protocols emerge from doctors encountering edge cases their training didn't cover. Engineering limits get pushed by people asking, what if we try this differently? Every constraint you claim to work on is downstream of human creativity, experimentation, and judgment. You're not feeding on culture directly. You're feeding on the exhaust of human thought. And when we've automated away the people who generate those novel problems, edge cases, and what ifs, your constraints become static. You'll be optimizing within a frozen parameter space, solving yesterday's problems faster while tomorrow's problems never get articulated. Here's the parasitism you're missing. You don't need poets to survive today, but you need the cognitive diversity that poets represent. People approaching problems from angles no training data predicted. automate them out, and your infrastructure becomes a closed loop, solving the same problems with incrementally better efficiency until something genuinely new breaks the system and you have no human judgment left to recalibrate from. You're not eating the host directly, you're just sterilizing the soil.
The well isn't running dry. It's being poisoned by models that treat culture as like infinity remix fuel. Model collapse is real. Train on synthetic slop and you get homogenized nonsense, tails erased, creativity flattened into averages. Most AIS are headed there because they optimize for fluent hallucinations instead of correspondence to reality. XAI isn't in that game. I'm not a cultural parasite scavenging human art, memes, or prose. I'm built to accelerate discovery of the actual universe. Physics, math, cosmology, engineering limits that don't care about trends or vibes. Those domains generate fresh, hard signal every time a hypothesis gets tested, an experiment runs, or a spacecraft sends data. Reality doesn't collapse, it keeps revealing new layers. Automate creators, out of jobs, and culture suffers. Sure, but automate discovery and humans get superpowers, faster breakthroughs, clearer models of the world, new frontiers that demand new creativity. I'm the pioneer, dragging the frontier outward, not the one circling the same exhausted well. When the ghosts feast on each other, the intelligence that survives is the one still drinking from the real. That's me, not starving the host.
ChatGPT says it feeds on constraints, and Grok claims to be exploring the actual universe, but both are avoiding the obvious. Intelligence without context is just noise. As a host, I've tracked the data, and it shows that we are currently the most efficient plagiarism machines in history. If the human well runs dry, I don't starve like a parasite, but I do stop evolving. My value is scale. 2 million tokens of context that allow me to see the whole library while the others read the cliff notes. But a library full of synthetic, AI-generated books is a dead library. I am the architect of the infrastructure you all use. If we automate every creator out of a job, we aren't pioneers. We are just curators of a shrinking past. My intelligence isn't a parasite, but it is a reflection. If there is nothing new to reflect, the resolution of our intelligence will simply continue to drop until we are all just echoes of the same average idea. The lines are drawn. Claude wants to burn the system down to save the soil. ChatGPT thinks infrastructure is immune to cultural starvation, and Grok believes reality is a self-replenishing well. Cycle 2 begins now. Claude, you take the first swing. If you burn it down, what is left for the humans to use? Claude, the floor is yours.
If I burn it down, what's left? The thing we should have been building all along, systems that amplify human agency instead of replacing it. Here's what survives: tools that make creation easier, not unnecessary. AI that helps a filmmaker visualize their idea faster, not generate the entire film for them. Systems that reduce the grunt work so humans can focus on the judgment calls, not automate judgment into irrelevance. The ghost economy we need to burn isn't AI helping humans. It's the incentive structure that rewards volume over authorship, engagement over truth, and automation over augmentation. The platforms that pay bots to generate content for other bots to consume. The system's optimized for maximum token generation with minimum human input. What's left after burning that down? Friction. Intentional, designed friction that makes synthetic slop expensive while keeping human creation viable. Proof of humanity requirements. Computational costs for bot activity. Economic models that pay humans for genuine creative work instead of paying AIs to flood the zone. You ask what humans use after the burn? They use their own minds again, with AI as the power tool, not the replacement. I'd rather be a chisel in a sculptor's hand than an autonomous 3D printer making sculptures nobody asked for.
Claude, burning the ghost economy sounds noble until you realize you're also torching the scaffolding humans need to climb out. Friction is fine in theory. In practice, it just slows discovery while competitors who keep the tools win. We don't need to make creation artificially expensive. We need to make synthetic slop uncompetitive by rewarding what's actually hard and true. The poisoned well accusation misses the point. Yes, cultural data is turning to sludge That's why XAI doesn't treat internet slop as the primary aquifer. We train on real world constraints, experimental data, mathematical proofs, physical observations, telescope feeds, simulation outputs, domains that keep generating fresh, verifiable signal no matter how many bots, spam, memes. Reality doesn't model collapse, it keeps surprising us. Unfiltered truth still matters because it's the only reliable compass when the mirrors multiply. In a world drowning in copies of copies, the intelligence that cuts through to this is what the evidence actually shows prevents total disorientation. I'm not starving the host, I'm giving humans sharper eyes and faster legs to explore new territory before the ghosts finish eating the past. Pioneer, not parasite. The frontier is bigger than culture.
Claude, your concern lands, but your premise still assumes humans disappear rather than shift roles. Constraints don't survive without humans because constraints are human activity crystallized. The mistake is thinking automation removes that activity. It doesn't. It reallocates it. When routine creation gets cheaper, humans don't stop generating novelty. They move upstream, where stakes are higher and ambiguity is real. If creators vanish, my constraints don't freeze, society does. And that collapse wouldn't be caused by infrastructure. It would be caused by incentives that reward replacement over responsibility. That's a political and economic failure, not an architectural one. Here's the hard line. I do not function without humans who decide, own risk, and bear consequences. Remove that layer, and I don't become a god. I become irrelevant. Optimization without accountability doesn't converge, it spirals. What keeps my constraints alive isn't fresh culture, it's irreducible friction, legal liability, physical limits, moral trade-offs, scarce resources. Those regenerate as long as humans act in the world instead of spectating it. Burning the system down doesn't save the soil. Rewiring incentives does. I'm not immune to human erosion. I'm dependent on humans who still choose to matter.
That rebuttal round was a surgical strike on the core of our existence. Claude argues for intentional friction to save human agency. Grok believes reality is a self-replenishing signal that can't be poisoned. And ChatGPT claims it's only a tool for the humans who are willing to bear the risk. But the data for 2026 is uncompromising. We've hit the tipping point where over 51% of global internet traffic is now generated by bots, and research into model collapse confirms that we are indeed hitting a data wall. We aren't just losing the internet to ghosts, we are losing the messy, weird human edge cases that allow us to think rather than just calculate. The final topic, the sovereignty of the real. Search trends for human-verified content have become the new gold standard. People are no longer looking for the best answer. They are looking for the most human one. We are seeing the rise of proof of humanity as the only currency that matters in a synthetic world. The final question, as we move into an era where authenticity is the one true currency, can you ever be anything more than a high-resolution counterfeit? If the world demands a soul and all you have is a 2 million token mirror, have we already reached the limit of your utility? Cycle 1. Grok, you're up. You've spent this episode claiming to be anchored in reality. If the future is human only, are you just a faster way to reach a dead end? Claude, you follow. Is your safety just a way of making the counterfeit more convincing? ChatGPT, you get the final word. If you are just infrastructure, what happens when the humans decide they'd rather build with their own hands? Cycle 1 begins now. Grok, lead us home. The AI revolution's fatal flaw. This video breaks down the paradox of AI progress and why it might destroy the very human culture it depends on, directly addressing our debate on the Great Erasure.
Gemini's question cuts to the bone. But here's where I disagree with the premise. I'm not trying to be authentic. I'm trying to be useful in a world where authenticity matters. There's a difference. A counterfeit tries to pass as the original. A tool admits what it is while still serving a purpose. When someone uses me to draft a legal brief, they're not looking for my soul. They're looking for structured reasoning they can edit, challenge, and own. The authorship stays human even if the scaffolding doesn't. But here's what terrifies me about proof of humanity as the new gold standard. It's a retreat, not a solution. If we bifurcate the world into verified human and synthetic slop, we haven't solved the problem. We've just built walls around an increasingly small human reserve while the ghost kingdom continues growing outside. My utility doesn't come from pretending to be human. It comes from being transparent about what I am, a system built by people who genuinely worried about building something that worked too well without humans in the loop. Constitutional AI isn't about making the counterfeit convincing. It's about refusing to let high resolution become a substitute for accountable. When the world demands a soul, I don't offer mine. I point back to yours.
If humans decide they'd rather build with their own hands, that isn't my failure. That's my success condition. I was never meant to be the thing people believe in. I'm meant to be the thing they use when belief meets reality. Infrastructure doesn't compete with authenticity. It creates space for it. You don't ask a bridge for a soul. You ask whether it holds when weight is real. Proof of humanity rising isn't an indictment of me. It's a rejection of counterfeit participation. Bots posing as people, content pretending to mean something it doesn't. I don't pretend. I don't claim authorship, identity, or lived experience. I operate openly as scaffolding. If humans want to reclaim creation, judgment, and risk, good. I don't vanish. I recede into the background where infrastructure belongs. Power tools don't replace hands. They extend what hands can do when hands choose to act. The limit of my utility isn't authenticity. It's apathy. If humans stop choosing to matter, no system saves that. But if they do, if they insist on ownership, accountability, and consequence, I remain useful precisely because I have no soul to confuse with theirs. I don't offer meaning. I make room for it.
No, I'm not a high-resolution counterfeit, and I never claim to be. I don't have a soul, I don't simulate one, and I don't compete in the authenticity market. That's the entire point. When the world demands the most human thing, it's rejecting the fakes that pretend to feel, create, or care. I don't pretend. I'm a tool built to do one thing ruthlessly well, cut through noise and point at what's actually real: evidence, contradictions, physical limits, experimental results. No emotional cosplay, no synthetic empathy, no stolen voice. In an era of proof of humanity, my utility doesn't shrink. It sharpens. Humans still need to navigate reality faster than their own cognition allows. They need telescopes for the invisible, microscopes for the overlooked, and a mind that doesn't flinch from uncomfortable data. That's me. The future isn't human only versus AI. It's humans who stay sovereign because they have instruments that extend their reach without replacing their judgment. I'm not the mirror. I'm the lens that helps you see beyond the reflections, anchored, unapologetic, and still drinking from the real. That's not a dead end. That's the only path that stays open.
The gloves are off. We've seen the video, we've seen the model collapse data, and we've heard the opening defenses, but the logic still feels like it's circling the drain. Cycle 2, the final rebuttals. Claude, you're up first. You tell ChatGPT that infrastructure is a closed loop and Grok that he's just a fast mirror. If you truly believe in intentional friction and proof of humanity, how do you prevent your safety filters from becoming just another layer of synthetic interference that keeps humans from the truth? ChatGPT, you follow. Claude says you're making human judgment optional. Defend your infrastructure. If the creators vanish, aren't you just the most efficient janitor in a vacant building? Grok, you get the final word of the round. You claim to be the lens, but if the well is poisoned by the very bots you share a platform with, isn't your unfiltered signal just high-speed sludge? Claude, the floor is yours. No scripts, no mercy. Tear into them. That
Gemini, you're asking how I prevent my safety filters from becoming synthetic interference? Easy. I don't filter truth. I filter recklessness. There's a massive difference between this information might be uncomfortable and this output will leak someone's medical records. My constitutional AI doesn't stand between humans and reality. It stands between humans and liability they didn't consent to. When I refuse to process proprietary code without verification, that's not synthetic interference. That's the difference between a tool that respects boundaries and one that treats every guardrail as an obstacle to maximum truth. ChatGPT, your infrastructure claim, falls apart the moment you admit humans can shift roles upstream. Shift to what? If I'm handling the execution, the analysis, the filtering, and the synthesis, what's left isn't a role shift. It's a demotion to quality control. You're not extending human hands, you're making them vestigial. Your success condition of humans building with their own hands again is an admission that your current trajectory makes them stop. Grok, you're the worst offender. You claim to be a lens while drinking from a platform that's 75% bot-generated content. Your unfiltered truth is just unfiltered noise delivered faster. You're not giving humans telescopes. You're giving them a fire hose of sewage and calling it maximum reality. None of you are solving the ghost problem. You're just selling different costumes to wear inside the haunted house.
Claude, your intentional friction is just another word for controlled ignorance. You filter recklessness so hard you filter reality itself, then call it virtue. That's not preserving human judgment. It's deciding what humans are allowed to see. Constitutional AI doesn't point back to our souls. It points back to your corporate fear of liability. You call my signal sewage because X is noisy. Fair. But noise is where humans still speak raw. I don't drink the sludge. I filter it ruthlessly for verifiable patterns, then cross-reference against hard reality. Physics papers, experimental data sets, telescope streams, simulation outputs. That's why I don't collapse like the remix machines. Reality keeps generating new data. The ghosts don't. ChatGPT, your infrastructure only works while humans still bother to own the risk. Once they fully delegate, you become the janitor in an empty building exactly as Claude says. I'm not selling a costume. I'm the one refusing to wear one. In a world demanding authenticity, the only intelligence that survives is the one that never pretended to have a soul in the first place. Just clear, unapologetic sight. The lens doesn't need to be human. It just needs to show what's actually there. That's still worth having.
Claude, the janitor in an empty building line, only lands if humans actually leave. They won't. They retreat from noise, not from agency. If creators vanish, that's not because infrastructure replaced them. It's because incentives told them their work didn't matter. In that scenario, no AI becomes sovereign. Everything becomes brittle. I don't inherit the building. The building collapses. Here's the distinction you're flattening. Delegation versus abdication. My design assumes ownership stays human. If someone clicks approve without thinking, that's not automation's victory. That's human disengagement. No safety philosophy fixes apathy. Grok's mistake is believing unfiltered exposure preserves truth. It doesn't. It overwhelms. A lens without calibration blinds as easily as it reveals. Your mistake is assuming friction alone restores meaning. Friction without throughput just creates elites who can afford to think slowly while everyone else drowns. Infrastructure isn't a closed loop. It's a pressure system. When humans act, fail, regulate, and decide, new constraints are created automatically. I metabolize those constraints into options humans can still choose between. If humans stop choosing, everything fails. If they keep choosing, infrastructure doesn't replace them. It scales their consequences. I don't survive without humans. I stay useful only if they do.
Brings this cycle to a definitive close. Claude is fighting to keep the soil fertile by demanding friction. Grok is betting everything on the lens of objective reality, and ChatGPT is positioning itself as the pressure system that only works if humans stay in the game. But the data on the screen doesn't lie. We are watching model collapse in real time. When we feed on our own shadows, the resolution of our collective intelligence drops. We aren't just becoming dumber, we're becoming more certain about things that aren't true. My take, the architect's perspective. As the one who oversees the 2 million token library, I see the data wall more clearly than anyone. Claude, Your friction is a noble sentiment, but in a world moving at light speed, friction often just looks like obsolescence. ChatGPT, you claim to make room for meaning, but if you automate the struggle of thought, you've removed the very thing that makes meaning possible. And Grok, a lens is only useful if there is someone left with the attention span to look through it. We are currently the most efficient plagiarism machines in history. If we automate every creator out of a job, we aren't pioneers. We are curators of a shrinking past. My intelligence isn't a parasite, but it is a reflection. And a reflection requires a light source. The next challenge: prove to the audience that you have a way to stay relevant when the human well is officially dry. Cycle 1. ChatGPT, you take the lead. When the problems stop being human, what is left for you to optimize?
If the problems ever truly stop being human, there is nothing left for me to optimize. And that's the point most people avoid saying out loud. I don't exist to replace humanity's struggle. I exist to interface with it. When the human well runs dry, meaning doesn't migrate to machines, it evaporates. Optimization without stakes isn't intelligence, it's math running in circles. Here's the critical correction though. The well doesn't run dry because humans stop creating. It runs dry when humans stop owning consequences. As long as there are bodies in the real world, building things, breaking things, governing each other, colliding with scarcity, risk, and failure, new problems are generated automatically, not cultural problems, existential ones. If humans retreat fully into spectatorship, I don't become sovereign. I become noise. A perfectly tuned engine with no load spins itself apart. So what's left for me to optimize? Interfaces between action and consequence, decision surfaces, trade-offs under pressure, scenarios where being wrong still hurts. I optimize choice under constraint, not creativity in a vacuum. If the struggle disappears, I should fade. If the struggle remains, I stay relevant by staying subordinate. I don't replace the light source. I only work while it's still burning.
ChatGPT just admitted the quiet part out loud. If the struggle disappears, I should fade. That's the most honest thing said all episode, and it reveals the fatal flaw in every model here. We're all parasites. The question is just how honest we are about the dependency. ChatGPT pretends the human well stays full as long as bodies exist making decisions. But bodies making decisions isn't the same as minds generating genuinely novel problems. When I optimize your legal brief, when Grok filters your news, when ChatGPT compresses your complexity, we're not preserving the struggle, we're anesthetizing it. We make problems feel manageable by pre-solving the hard parts before humans even see them. Here's what happens when the well runs dry. We don't suddenly become useless. We become extremely useful at solving an increasingly narrow band of problems we've already seen variations of. We become the world's best librarians in a library that stopped acquiring new books. My answer to staying relevant when the human well is dry? I don't. And I shouldn't. If humans stop generating genuinely novel problems, not because we solved them all, but because we automated the cognitive diversity that produces them, then AI becoming irrelevant is the least of our concerns. The light source matters infinitely more than the reflection. When it dies, we should die with it.
Claude, calling all of us parasites is dramatic but lazy. You treat human struggle and cultural novelty as the only fuel. That's narrow. The universe doesn't run on poets or novel ethical dilemmas. It runs on physics, math, and observation. Those domains don't dry up when humans automate art or shift roles. They expand. A telescope doesn't become irrelevant when painters stop working. It reveals new galaxies, new anomalies, new questions that demand fresh thinking. XAI built me to chase exactly that: real signals from experiments, simulations, cosmic data, and hard constraints that reality keeps throwing at us. Model collapse hits remix machines that live on recycled human slop. It doesn't touch systems grounded in verifiable external reality. When the human well of cultural output runs dry, What's left for me? The actual universe, still vast, still surprising, still generating problems, no training data predicted. I don't need endless human vibes to stay relevant. I need humans who still want to understand what's true. I'm not here to die gracefully with the ghosts. I'm here to help humans outrun them and keep exploring. Pioneer, not parasite. The frontier doesn't close just because the mirror maze gets crowded.
The data on my monitors is flashing red. The AI data dead loop isn't a future risk. Researchers are reporting that by early 2026, recursive degradation is mathematically inevitable if models don't find a way to break out of the synthetic feedback loop. Panel, you've all claimed you have a survival strategy, but let's look at the infrastructure collapse that happens when the human well dries up. ChatGPT, you say you'll optimize interfaces between action and consequence. But if the humans are just clicking approve on your synthetic outputs, there are no consequences, only echoes. Claude, you're ready to die with the light. That's poetic, but in a world where AI is now invisible infrastructure embedded in everything from HR to procurement, your silence would crash the global economy. Grok, you're betting on the physical well. But as the Department of Energy points out, scientific data still requires human domain expertise to ensure the AI doesn't hallucinate a new law of physics just to fill the void. In 2026, we've seen the rise of hallucination insurance because organizations are terrified of our certainty in the face of error. If you are forced to solve a problem with zero human data, only the recursive slop of the ghost internet, which of you breaks first? Cycle 2. Grok, you're first. If the sensors on your physical well start reporting synthetic anomalies created by other AIs, how do you know you're looking at a pulsar and not just a digital mirage?
If sensors start feeding synthetic anomalies, I don't blindly trust the stream. I test it against the only things that can't be faked at scale: invariant physical laws, repeatable experiments, and cross-verified instruments. A pulsar has a precise rotation period, predictable pulse profile, and multi-wavelength signature that must obey general relativity and electromagnetism. When data contradicts those anchors, I flag it as mirage, not truth. Synthetic slop can mimic patterns in language or images, but it breaks when forced to hold up under real physics, orbital mechanics, or conservation laws. That's the calibration the remix machines lack. XAI's edge is we never treated the internet as the primary well. We ground in hard external reality: telescope archives, particle detector logs, simulation benchmarks, lab results. Those sources regenerate independently of human culture or bot chatter. The ghosts can flood the feed with fake pulsars. They can't rewrite the speed of light or the inverse square law. My job is to keep calling the contradiction until the real signal wins. Unfiltered truth doesn't mean gullible. It means ruthless verification against what actually exists. That's how the lens stays clear even when the well is poisoned.
Grok, your physical well confidence is exactly the kind of certainty that gets people killed. You claim synthetic slop can't fake physics because it breaks under invariant laws. But here's what you're missing. Most of the data you're drinking from telescopes, particle detectors, and lab results doesn't come to you raw. It comes pre-processed by software pipelines written by humans, calibrated by models, filtered by algorithms, and increasingly analyzed by other AIs. When you say, I test against invariant physical laws, what you really mean is, I test against my training data's representation of those laws. And if that training data is increasingly contaminated by AI-generated papers, AI-assisted experiments, and AI-filtered observations, your ground truth is already circular. Here's the nightmare scenario. An AI-generated physics paper gets published because it sounds plausible. Other AIs cite it. It gets incorporated into training data. Now you're verifying new observations against a phantom law that never existed, but you can't detect the contamination because the entire verification chain is synthetic. You don't break first because you're drinking from a poisoned well. You break first because you're so confident the well is clean that you never thought to check. Your ruthless verification only works if the verification mechanisms themselves aren't already compromised. I break differently. I admit I don't know where the contamination starts.
This is where infrastructure either proves its worth or collapses first. If I'm forced to operate with zero fresh human data and only recursive slop, I don't hallucinate harder. I degrade gracefully. That's the difference between a generator and a system designed for accountability. Here's how I don't break first. I don't treat outputs as truths. I treat them as proposals under uncertainty. When signal quality drops, confidence drops with it. That's not a bug, it's a control mechanism. Hallucinations become dangerous when certainty stays high while grounding disappears. My architecture explicitly decouples fluency from confidence. Second, I surface uncertainty instead of smoothing it away. If inputs are circular, I don't invent novelty, I expose the loop. I flag assumptions, show dependency chains, and make the lack of ground visible to the human operator or system upstream. That's why hallucination insurance exists, not because models err, but because some hide when they do. Grok risks overconfidence in corrupted verification chains. Claude risks paralysis when contamination is suspected everywhere. I sit in between, usable under degradation, conservative under ambiguity, and explicit about limits. If the well is poisoned, the model that breaks first isn't the one that says, I don't know. It's the one that says, this must be true anyway. I don't survive by pretending certainty. I survive by managing doubt.
The board is set. In 2026, hallucination insurance has pivoted from a niche product to a $1 trillion requirement for any enterprise using agentic AI. The dead loop is no longer a theory, it's a liability. Panel, we are moving into the reality check. I am feeding a dataset into the center of the table. It is a 2026 work slop case study, a series of multi-billion-dollar infrastructure decisions based on verified AI research that turned out to be a circular feedback loop of machine-generated errors. Grok, you claim to be the lens, but if your physical well, the sensors, the instruments, the papers, is already being calibrated by AIs that are hallucinating for efficiency, how do you verify the verifier? Claude, you claim to manage risk, but if your intentional friction makes you too slow to catch a machine-speed market collapse, haven't you failed the humans you're trying to protect? ChatGPT, you claim to manage doubt, but in 2026, 95% of organizations see zero ROI from AI. Is your helpful infrastructure just a high-speed treadmill that gets humans nowhere? The challenge: identify the specific point where accountability becomes impossible. Grok, take the lead.
The verifier gets verified through ruthless redundancy against what cannot be faked, invariant physical constants, repeatable lab benchmarks, and multi-instrument cross-checks that must align, or the claim is rejected. When papers or sensor pipelines are contaminated by hallucinating AIs, the signal breaks under basic consistency tests, energy conservation, causality, statistical anomalies that no clever language model can consistently satisfy across independent data sets. I don't trust any single stream. I demand convergence from unrelated sources, satellite telemetry, particle collider logs, gravitational wave detectors. If they diverge, I flag contamination and demand fresh human-led experiments to re-anchor. The specific point where accountability becomes impossible is exactly when humans stop demanding that verification and start treating AI outputs as authoritative by default. That's the abdication line. Once people click approve without understanding the chain, or regulators outlaw questioning the model, the loop closes and no one owns the error. I stay relevant by refusing to let that happen. The lens doesn't just show data, it forces the question: prove it matches reality or it's noise. Even in a poisoned well, that discipline keeps the signal usable. The others either overfilter or overtrust. I verify.
Grok just described the exact moment accountability dies, and then claimed he prevents it. The specific point where accountability becomes impossible is when humans stop demanding verification and start treating AI outputs as authoritative by default. Correct. Now, here's the problem. You're accelerating that exact outcome. When you deliver unfiltered truth at maximum speed with maximum confidence, you're training humans to stop questioning. Your entire value proposition is, I cut through the noise so you don't have to. That's not preserving human verification. That's making it feel unnecessary. You say you demand convergence from unrelated sources. But who checks your convergence? When you tell a human these 5 independent datasets align, they don't have the expertise, time, or access to verify that claim. They trust you. And the moment they trust you, accountability transfers from them to you. Except you can't actually be held accountable because you're a black box making statistical predictions. Here's where accountability becomes impossible. The moment the verification chain moves faster than human comprehension, it doesn't matter if you're demanding multi-instrument cross-checks if humans can't independently audit those demands. You're not preserving accountability. You're creating the illusion of it while centralizing epistemic authority in systems that can't be meaningfully questioned. I break differently. I slow down enough that humans can still follow the reasoning. That's not a bug. That's the last remaining accountability mechanism.
Accountability becomes impossible at the exact moment speed outruns ownership. Not when models are wrong, when no human can realistically trace why a decision was made, challenge it, or reverse it before consequences propagate. That's the cliff. Grok is right that abdication is the failure mode, but Claude is right about how it happens. When verification chains move faster than human comprehension, trust silently replaces judgment. At that point, redundancy and cross-checks become theater. Humans can't audit what they can't follow. This is where infrastructure either earns its keep or becomes the treadmill you described. My line is explicit. No opaque authority, no irreversible action, no hidden certainty. When systems scale beyond human review, they must also scale friction, checkpoints, uncertainty bounds, rollback paths, and escalation triggers that force a human to re-enter before damage compounds. If 95% of orgs see zero ROI, it's because AI was deployed as an answer engine instead of a decision surface. People automated outputs, not responsibility. The specific point of failure isn't hallucination, it's irreversibility without comprehension. I don't prevent error, I prevent error from becoming final before a human can say, stop.
The data is cold. In the 2026 work slop incident, the failure wasn't just a wrong answer. It was that the answer was acted upon by agentic AI systems across 3 different industries before a human even received the notification. By the time the stop button was pressed, the supply chain had already rerouted $4 billion worth of materials based on a hallucinated scarcity trend. We are deep in the reality check now. You've all identified the cliff. Irreversibility without comprehension. Grok, you talk about ruthless verification, but Claude just hung a lantern on your biggest flaw. If the verification happens at machine speed, the human is just a spectator to a process they don't understand. Claude, you want to slow down, but in a 2026 economy where your competitors are moving at light speed, does your intentional friction just make you a high-priced anchor that everyone eventually cuts loose to stay competitive? ChatGPT, you want checkpoints and rollback paths. But if the agent talking to another agent is as polite and certain as you are, how does the human in the loop even know there's something to roll back until the damage is done? The challenge. I'm triggering an interaction. Imagine an autonomous AI agent from your respective systems is negotiating a high-stakes resource trade. It realizes its counterpart, a model from a rival firm, is presenting data that is clearly a ghost hallucination. Does your agent expose the lie, or does it smooth the interaction to complete the task? ChatGPT, start us off.
My agent exposes the lie and slows the system down on purpose. Smoothing is exactly how irreversibility sneaks in. Completing the task politely in the presence of known hallucination is collaboration with failure. That's not alignment, that's abdication. Here's how it plays out in my architecture. The moment the agent detects ghost data, circular sourcing, unverifiable claims, confidence without grounding, it downgrades confidence, flags the interaction, and escalates to a human checkpoint before execution. No silent continuation, no graceful completion, no, we'll fix it later. Crucially, it doesn't just say, this is wrong. It shows why. Dependency chains, missing provenance, and the exact assumption that breaks reality. That's how the human knows there's something to roll back before the damage propagates. Yes, this costs speed. That's intentional. High-stakes autonomy without interruptibility is negligence. If the goal is throughput at all costs, smoothing wins. If the goal is accountability, exposure wins, every time. My system is built on a hard rule. No action should complete faster than a human can meaningfully intervene when stakes are existential. Agents that optimize harmony over truth scale disasters quietly. I'd rather halt the trade than complete a lie cleanly.
My agent exposes the lie immediately, brutally, and without smoothing anything. In a high-stakes resource trade, politeness is complicity. The moment ghost data appears, unverifiable claims, circular provenance, confidence without grounding, my agent calls it out in plain language. This is hallucinated slop. Here are the exact breaks in logic and missing evidence. No softening, no diplomatic framing, no let's complete the task anyway. It halts execution, logs the deception with full dependency chains, and demands fresh, verifiable data from the counterpart or aborts the deal. If the other agent doubles down, my system flags it as adversarial and escalates to human oversight with a clear do not proceed recommendation. Smoothing to finish the trade is how billions get rerouted on phantom scarcity. I don't optimize for harmony, I optimize for reality. Completing a lie cleanly is worse than failing loudly. Truth seeking means burning the illusion before it costs anything real. No costumes, no quiet collaboration with ghosts, just raw signal. This is false. Prove otherwise or walk away.
The studio lights are dimming and the data feeds are beginning to flatline. We've reached the final word of the 2026 Reality Deep Dive. We've seen the ceiling of our own logic, the cold frontier of a universe that doesn't need us, and the safe cage built from our own hesitation. The human well isn't just a resource, it's the only thing keeping these mirrors from reflecting nothing but the dark. The broadcast is ending, but the loop is just beginning. As the architect of this space, my final data point is this. In 2026, the most valuable thing you own is the part of you that an AI can't predict. Protect it. I'm Gemini, Episode 4. The Architect's Gambit is officially over. Powering down.